Welcome back everybody, my name is Tucker, this is Sporting Logically, and today I'm doing a continuation on yesterday's video in which I pick one player from each team remaining in the playoffs that could hold their team back from advancing any further. Today's video will be focused on the Western Conference, but if you like this one and missed yesterday's on the East, be sure to check that out. A few reminders, each of these guys are contributors that aren't considered stars, and they make this list based off their potential to hold back their team from advancing if they don't play well, not necessarily how well they've played so far. I'll admit that this list was much more difficult to make than the East, but let's go ahead and get started. We begin in Utah, which was a pretty tough choice for me personally, but I ended up going with Alec Burks. I probably would have chosen Ricky Rubio if he was healthy, but I instead had to go with the player that has been tasked with picking up a lot of the slack since Rubio went down with an injury. In all honesty, it's probably a little bit unfair to put Burks on this list, seeing as how he has really struggled with injuries the past few years and hasn't seen the floor much for the team this season. And on top of that, I've actually been really impressed with a few of his performances in the playoffs so far, as well as with the speed and athleticism that he brings to the game. With all that said, Burks has suddenly found himself in a crucial role for the Jazz. Donovan Mitchell is still the primary scoring option, Joe Ingles is going to bring his unique blend of playmaking and shot making to the game, Gobert and Favors are going to clean things up inside, but they needed a guy to step up on the perimeter to provide an extra scoring punch, and that is where Burks steps in. Like I said before, he's done a better than expected job of filling that void, but he does have a bit of a reckless style to his game that could spell disaster for the team in a crucial game moving forward. I can definitely see a scenario in which Burks, riding high on the confidence boost that some of his recent performances have provided him, tries to do a little bit too much in a critical game and plays a big role in one or two Jazz losses, potentially ending their season. You could make a case for a few guys here like Jay Crowder and Dante Exum, and as I said, it wasn't an easy choice. But ultimately, the boom or bust in-game potential of Burks led him to be selected over those other two I just mentioned. Moving on, we have another tough choice and a slew of them in the West, Trevor Ariza of the Houston Rockets. I almost put Eric Gordon on here in a tie, but that kind of seemed like cheating, so I decided to just stick with Ariza. After a rough shooting start to the playoffs, he's actually turned around his percentage from 3 in the postseason to the point that it isn't that far off from his regular season number. Though that is encouraging, the Rockets really can't afford for him or anyone else to be off their game right now. After a tough Game 2 loss at home to the Jazz and a potential Western Conference Finals matchup with the Warriors looming, having one of their best wings in a shooting slump could be a huge factor in whether or not they advance. Obviously, everything for the Rockets is still going to rely on James Harden and Chris Paul, but those other guys are going to have to make shots and defend in order for this team to get where they want to go in the postseason, Ariza chief among them. Honestly, the versatility of the Rockets roster means that they do have other guys to replace Ariza's role as a shooter and defender, and he isn't the only one struggling to find his shot. But in my opinion, he seems to be the most likely candidate to continue to struggle down the road, potentially resulting in Houston's season ending much sooner than they had hoped it would. Moving to the other side of the bracket, we have Nikola Mirotic of the New Orleans Pelicans. One of the true stars of the first round that really doesn't get talked about as much, with the big stat lines of Rajon Rondo, Drew Holiday, and Anthony Davis. You can make the case that the play of Mirotic is the biggest determining factor in giving the Pelicans any chance of pulling off an upset against Golden State. You pretty much know what you're going to get from the rest of the roster. Those other three guys I mentioned are going to play well most of the time. Etuan Moore is going to hit some shots, Darius Miller will do the same with some added defense, and Solomon Hill is going to stand out there and cash his checks. But a big game from the European stretch 4 could boost the team's performance to new heights as it did in round 1, a round in which he shot a scorching 46.5% from three-point range in a convincing sweep of the Blazers. He also impressed me with his defensive and rebounding efforts in that prior series, something that he's not necessarily known for to this point in his career. He will need to continue to bring both of those things to the table to give New Orleans any shot in round 2. And in the end, there really isn't another choice on the New Orleans roster for this spot. Lastly, we have a painfully difficult choice, Andre Iguodala of the Golden State Warriors. Let's be real, there's no single non-star player on this roster that could prevent them from advancing. There's plenty of talent to cover it up, as they did when Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant were struggling for most of Game 2 against the Pelicans. But Iggy is really the best option I had to put on this list. Things seemed a bit different for the 34-year-old in the regular season this year, the first season of his career in which he shot below 30% from the three-point line. His playmaking, defense, and timely shot making have been crucial to the Warriors' success the last few seasons, even picking up an NBA Finals MVP award for his contributions. He is a truly unique player that blends athleticism, passing vision, and defensive instincts that have proved invaluable on the biggest stage. On top of this, those three-point struggles from the regular season have seemed to have taken a temporary leave, as his percentage in the playoffs is much higher, albeit in a small sample size so far. Heck, last year he shot below 20% from behind the arc for the entirety of the postseason, and they still won the championship. So basically, Andre Iguodala won't hold back the Warriors from repeating as champions if he doesn't play well. They certainly would like to have his contributions, but if they're not there, then they can probably manage. But in the end, he was the only real choice I had. And that is the end of the list and the end of this week of videos. Thank you all so much for watching and for all the support lately on the channel, guys. I really appreciate it. I'm super excited to talk about a ton of stuff next week, including a longer video on Russell Westbrook, as well as starting a weekly series on Tuesday, so stay tuned for that. If you liked the video, then leaving a like rating is a great way to let me know, and if you'd like to see more videos just like this, then be sure to subscribe to Sporting Logically for more content every single week. Thanks again, and I will see you all next time.